But
You know I can't get out of my head.
I know. No, listen.
It just doesn't stop.
It's okay. Give me a hug. It's okay. I know what you're going through. We've been there before.
No, it still doesn't stop now, and I'm already going back to
But
negative.
the more you're talking about yourself.
She was once praised as a leader who showed a lot of young people how to be brave and have hope. But behind the fame and attention from people all over the country, Jazz Jennings has been quietly going through unbearable pain. What began as an exciting trip quickly turned into a heartbreaking battle. Her story takes a dark turn that not many people saw coming, with health problems and mental problems. Many people don't understand how sad Jazz Jennings' story really is. Jazz Jennings is one of the most important people in the LGBTQ community, especially when it comes to how transgender teens are portrayed. It was a big deal when TLC said that Jazz would be the star of her own reality show called I Am Jazz. At the time, the move was seen as controversial, but it turned out to be one of the network's most popular shows. But the story of the Jennings family and their trip into the public eye was much more complicated than most people thought. There were deeper secrets that were kept from the public. Jazz rose to fame before I Am Jazz even aired. Jazz became one of the most famous transgender kids in the world when she was just a little girl. All eyes were on her. She talked about her life as a transgender girl on national TV for the first time when she was only 6 years old. This early exposure was very important in making people more aware of transgender kids. It also helped start a more open conversation about gender identity and the problems transgender people face. Greg and Jeanette Jennings, Jazz's parents, made a very controversial choice when they openly supported their child's transition at such a young age. The media paid a lot of attention to the Jennings family because many people couldn't understand why parents would let their child move so young. People all over the country had strong opinions about the choice. Some said Jazz was too young to make such an important choice. Some people praised the family for being open and helpful. Ultimately, the Jennings' decision to openly support Jazz's identity helped to give the transgender community a face, making it easier for people to talk about and giving transgender people more attention. There were hard times for Jazz on her trip, both in her private and public life. During Jazz's early years, being kept out of girls' sports was one of the most talked about problems. As a transgender girl, Jazz had problems that many straight girls didn't have to deal with. For example, she wasn't allowed to do things like play sports. This left-out person became a big problem for the Jennings family. While Jazz's parents pushed for her to be able to play sports with other girls, schools and sports groups often said no. One of the main ideas of I Am Jazz was Jazz's fight to be seen for who she was, not what other people thought she should be. The Jennings family handled their public and private lives with ease, even though they had problems. Their likability and relatability led to the creation of the TLC show I Am Jazz. The show told about Jazz's daily life, giving a personal look at the life of a transgender teen growing up in a time when gender identity problems were still being debated. People who watched I Am Jazz saw not only Jazz's problems, but also how her family helped her. Jazz's parents and brothers all played important roles in her journey, but there was a lot more going on behind the scenes of this family's seemingly normal life. The show showed a friendly and helpful family, but there were more sides to their story that were only revealed later. The stress that being in the public eye put on the Jennings family became clear as the show went on. They were always in the news, felt like they had to be great role models, and had to deal with the emotional stress of living out such a private story for everyone to see. The Jennings family had to deal with both the pressures of public attention and their own personal problems, especially when it came to how they understood gender and identity. Even though Jazz's siblings were there for her, they had their own problems figuring out what their jobs were in the family. People were always talking about and paying attention to the Jennings family, which put them under a lot of stress. The Jennings family has stood out on reality TV, where many families and individuals share private parts of their lives with the public. This is because they are known to be transgender, and because they changed their last name, which not many people know about. This choice may seem strange, but it was made for a number of reasons. All of them had to do with the family's desire to keep their privacy, keep themselves safe, and make their public life a little easier to handle when there is debate. Before anything else, the Jennings family chose to change their last name because they were in a very public position. People have strong opinions about Jazz Jennings's public shift and the fact that she is one of the youngest transgender people in the media. Transgender people were not as well understood or accepted at the time they made this choice as they are now. With so much attention on Jazz and the reality show I Am Jazz, showing her personal journey, she was bound to get a lot of it, most of it negative and mean. The family chose to go by a fake name because they knew that telling everyone about Jazz's shift and how much they supported her could lead to anger and even violence. When the Jennings family changed their last name, they hoped to add another layer of safety against any harm that might come from raising their child in public. A more realistic reason was also given for the name change. Jeanette, Jazz's mother, said that the family's original last name was a long, complicated Jewish name that a lot of people had trouble pronouncing. In a time when celebs and people in the media are looking for easier ways to connect with the public, the choice was made to go with a last name that is shorter and easier to remember. Making this choice was mostly a practical one meant to make their public life easier by avoiding the problems that come with having a name that is hard to say or remember. They wanted to make themselves easier to talk to, avoid problems that weren't necessary in public or in conversations, and build a stronger bond with their fans. Even though these were good reasons, the family's choice to change their last name also showed how hard it is to live in public, especially for a young transgender girl and her family, who had to deal with both their personal lives and the angry responses they got. People became interested in Jazz Jennings's story, and the name change was just one of many steps her family took to protect her safety and privacy. But Jazz's choice to come out as transgender as a child in public would continue to cause debate, especially among people who were against transgender rights or Jazz's very public journey. One of the most famous fights the Jennings family has ever had was with Derek Dillard, a fellow TLC star from the show Counting On. After a series of hurtful tweets about Jazz and the transgender community as a whole, Dillard, whose family was also on the show, got into a nasty fight with the Jennings family. Dillard said bad things about I Am Jazz on Twitter, calling it an oxymoron and making fun of the idea of a reality show about a gay person. He wrote on Twitter, "What an oxymoron, a reality show that follows a non-reality." After the tweet, a bunch of mean things were said about the transgender community. Transgender people are not real, according to Dillard, who said that gender is set by God. These comments quickly made Jazz's friends and the LGBTQ community as a whole very angry. They saw them as hurtful and harmful. Many people didn't agree with what he said about Jazz or with his attempts to make transgender people's presence seem less real, which added to the anger and disagreement. Fans of Jazz quickly defended her, taking to social media to show how angry they were about Dillard's mean behavior. They were angry that he used his fame to pick on a teenager who was weak and a transgender teen who had been very open about her identity. As the reaction grew, Dillard wouldn't back down. Instead, he said even more hurtful things. He kept using male names to talk about Jazz, calling her he and him in tweets, adding to the tension and making it clear that he didn't want to have a polite conversation. Jazz, on the other hand, had been through this before. She had been bullied and treated badly her whole life, usually by people who didn't understand or accept who she was. She had heard mean things about her gender from strangers, teachers, and other people who didn't agree with her. Even though this happened, Jazz had learned to toughen up and kept going with the help of her family, who were always there for her. After Dillard's attacks, Jazz reacted with poise and maturity far beyond her years. She chose not to get involved in the drama and instead kept her focus on her goal to raise awareness about transgender issues and be a role model for other transgender people. Jazz didn't seem to mind what was going on, but it seemed to have a bigger effect on Dillard. People quickly and strongly disagreed with what he said, and it wasn't long before TLC did something about it. That's it for Dillard on Counting On. He hasn't been on the network since. His comments that caused a lot of controversy hurt his job and reputation a lot, while the Jennings family's support and fame grew. While this was going on, Jazz continued to be a positive light, showing that kindness and strength could shine through even when people were mean. Jazz Jennings paved the way for the transgender society and is now one of its most well-known and important members. Not only has her journey been public through her reality TV show I Am Jazz, but it has also been a hard time for her personally. Many people have learned from and been inspired by Jazz's fame, but the problems she faces every day are just as hard, if not harder. Being a famous transgender figure takes a toll on Jazz's emotions and mental health. She has to deal with bullying in her personal life and hate speech online. Some of the good things Jazz has done with her fame are become an activist and teach others. Jazz co-wrote a children's book called I Am Jazz in 2014. The book was meant to help kids understand gender identity, especially the stories of transgender people. Jazz and her mother, Jeanette, wrote the book so that parents, teachers, and kids could use it to learn more about transgender people and how to understand and accept them. A lot of people liked the book. Some people were against it when a teacher wanted to read it out loud to her class to support a transgender student. It came back quickly and hard. People whose kids went to that school were angry and said the book went against their personal or religious views. People were angry because they thought the book promoted a controversial and, in their opinion, wrong view of gender. These parents thought that the book's ideas were not in line with their own and that it shouldn't be read in school. The school stayed firm in their decision to support the teacher's choice to read the book, even though there was a lot of negative feedback. Jazz and her family saw the support as a sign of growth and understanding, so they were happy to stand up to the loud critics. Jazz has herself celebrated this moment at different conferences, being proud of how her story and message have helped groups that are ready to stand up for acceptance. But the fights and threats in public didn't stop there. Because Jazz chose to live her life as a transgender girl in public, she has been hated online non-stop. Internet trolls and critics send her nasty, hurtful messages all the time. Some of them even threaten her safety. It can be hard to handle how mean people can be online, and for a young person like Jazz, it can be especially bad for her mental health. Along with the bigger cultural debates over transgender rights, these constant waves of negativity have made Jazz's very existence feel like an act of defiance toward people who don't want to accept transgender people. The Jennings family chose to hide some parts of their private lives because she was well known and could be hurt by the attention. They changed their last name and chose not to give out their home address, which makes it hard for people to find them or figure out where they live. It was necessary to make this choice to protect Jazz from people who would hurt her just for being herself. Even though their reality show is watched by a lot of people, the family works hard to set limits and keep Jazz as safe as possible, even if that means staying out of the public eye. People have always been interested in Jazz's life. Fans have seen her deal with the challenges of being a transgender girl and how she dates and forms relationships. Many people have been impressed by how open she is, and getting into Harvard was seen as a huge accomplishment. And not just for Jazz, but for all transgender people. It showed that transgender people could not only dream big, but also make those dreams come true. Jazz's acceptance into such an elite school was a big step in her journey that showed how smart, determined, and persistent she was. After this time of success, though, there was a more difficult part. After getting into Harvard, Jazz started having serious mental health problems, which were made worse by the stress of the pandemic. For someone who had already been through a lot of mental turmoil because of being bullied and rejected by others, these new problems were too much to handle. This was hard on Jazz's health because of the stress of school and being alone because of the pandemic. She turned to food as a way to deal with her problems, which caused her to gain a lot of weight, about 100 pounds in total. This did a lot of damage to Jazz's mental health and sense of self-worth. She had been honest about her problems for years, but the weight gain and the self-consciousness that came with it were new problems she hadn't had to deal with before. As her mental health problems got worse, it became clear that she would have a hard time getting through this time in her life. Too bad that this personal fight started to show up on this season of I Am Jazz, where Jazz tried to deal with problems with her mental health and how she looks. This season of the show has shown a different side of Jazz than the happy, sure-of-herself young woman that fans have come to know. This season looks at how Jazz deals with the mental pain of gaining weight and how that has changed her relationships, especially with her family. Even though Jazz's family had always been there for her and accepted her, they seemed to be having a hard time with her weight gain. Instead of loving and accepting Jazz no matter what, as they had in the past, some family members have been attacked for calling her fat and making comments that made her feel bad about herself. Jazz has been hurt by this change in the way things work because it goes against the supportive setting she had always known. Instead of talking about her problems freely and giving her emotional support, her family members have been shown to be angry and sometimes mean about how she looks. This season of I Am Jazz has shown a big and painful change in Jazz Jennings' attitude, which has made many fans sad and worried. Jazz used to be known for being lively, sure of herself, and upbeat, but now she seems less comfortable in her own skin, showing signs of internalized distress and anxiety. Since she has changed, people have thought that her pain might not just be from her ongoing mental health problems, but also from the constant criticism she gets, especially from her family. Viewers are seeing a much more shy and self-aware side of Jazz this season, which is very different from the person they have grown to know over the years. The way Jazz's family seems to deal with her weight gain and mental problems is an important part of this change. There has been disagreement in Jazz's family about her weight gain, which she herself has said is because she used food as a way to deal with a very hard time in her life. Even though Jazz has been open about how the pandemic and her mental health problems have affected her, her family has not always been helpful. They don't seem to care about or understand her, but instead focus on her weight, pointing out the physical rather than the emotional or mental causes of the problem. Her family has been putting constant pressure on her to change how she eats and works out, but they don't seem to be talking about the fact that she has an eating problem, ED. That's not just bad decisions. It's also a sign of bigger mental health problems. For Jazz, this season isn't just about changing her body. It's also about facing the mental and emotional problems that have been there the whole time. As Jazz deals with her feelings about herself and the expectations of her family and friends, she has to work hard to find her own voice and take back her sense of self. Like no other season, this one shows how hard it is to be a public person. Even more so when that figure is also a teen who is going through the same problems as many of her friends, but in a bigger way. In what ways do you see the sad story of Jazz Jennings move you? Please tell us what you think in the box below. We hope this video was helpful for you. Kindly click like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the video. Glad you watched, and see you in the next film. Thank you.